I placed my order for these new comics 3 months ago. Well, today is New Comic Book Day for me, so stay tuned as I open up this order. Welcome back, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and here I am, still down to my West Virginia location, but that didn't stop me from doing this new video today. I just got this in from M&M Comics. It is my monthly comic book shipment, my new comic books. And as I said in the intro, I order my comics. This is how I get new comics primarily, is by ordering through a subscription service, and I use M&M Comics. And I only get these books in once a month because I'm a cheap person. I only pay for one shipping a month. And so, as I've talked about in some of my previous videos, sometimes I have to wait for that hot book to get in here. And if I know what's in here, I think I've got a pretty hot comic book in this order right here. But we'll open it up and we'll figure out what we've got. And I've already opened it up from the packaging, but as you can see, they are still wrapped up into one big giant shipment here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away for a few minutes, and I'm actually going to bag and board every one of these comics. So as I'm presenting them, we'll definitely take care of the books. I did this video once before on one of the last M&M orders that I got in, and I wasn't happy that I was kind of mishandling the comics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bag and board these, and I'll come back, and then we'll go through this entire shipment, and I'll show you what I ended up ordering 3 months ago, and we'll see if I got some good books in here. We'll see what books that I may be dropping in the future, because I know if I've got some X-Men in here, I know I've been dropping that. And I know that some of my recent orders, in fact, I just put in my latest order, and I think I was down to 12 to 15 books. And you can tell that there's definitely more books than that in this shipment right here. So stay tuned, and I will be right back. All right, so thank you for giving me a moment to bag and board all the new comics that came in for this month's order. And this will give me a chance to be able to show you the books without worrying about damaging the books now. So this is a typical order every month. It has a little bit of stuff that I absolutely enjoy. It has a little bit of stuff that I'm just in the habit of collecting. It has some things that I'm going to end up dropping because I haven't been enjoying them. And it has something else at the end that I am just a fan of, and I'll explain that when we get to the end of the order here. But let's just start with the books, and I'll go through this as a typical new comic book order that I place with M&M Comics. I do this 3 months in advance so I can get those really good discounts on these books. Comics are expensive, and you know that. Well, when books are $4 and $5 plus a piece these days, any discounts you can get are great. But when I go to New Comic Book Day and I go to my regular LCS, such as Third Eye Comics, with my subscription pull box, I may be getting 10% off of the new comic book. But when I order 3 months in advance, I'm getting 35%, 40%, sometimes even 50% off of some of the books, but mostly 35% off of just about every new comic book that I get. So this is why I do this in advance. The disadvantage is that you will maybe miss getting that hot comic book that's going to come out. You may have just looked over the previews and didn't think that it was going to be worth getting multiple copies of. Or, and in the case of this, and what did I say earlier, is I expected to see one of the hottest comic books out there today in this order. But guess what? It wasn't. It was already going to be late coming in with this order. But now I know it's going to be in the next month's order. It's going to be a month and a half after Ultimate Spider-Man #1 came out. And the heat probably is going to be way off of it by that point. I just went to a comic book show, and regular cover A is going for $70 right now. Now, I know I've got at least one copy in the order. I thought it was going to be in this one. It's going to be in next month's. So there is a disadvantage to that. But luckily for me, if I'm better about this, I would have gone 2 weeks ago when this video comes out now, when Ultimate Spider-Man came out, and maybe picked up some of those variant covers. But I missed out on that because I'd already pre-ordered and didn't think much of it. To be honest, my take on the new Ultimate Universe is I can't believe it's so hot right now. aren't we just, it feels to me like we're just revisiting old ideas at this point with little twist. And I don't know how that's hot. Maybe I'm a little jaded with everything, but apparently everybody's excited about Ultimate Spider-Man #1. I don't know. I'm not super jazzed with it. But then again, I haven't read the book yet. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Let's get into the new comics that actually came in right here. That's why we're here today. New comic book month, guys. So here it is. So you saw the pack of bag comics that I had. Well, on the top and the bottom of every order, they put copies of DC Connect, which is the DC Comics preview book. And they actually gave me 2 of those. So I usually bag and board these as well. I can't hold on to these. In fact, some of these previews books like this, or even more so the Marvel's previews books right here, some of those can be actually kind of valuable because you'll actually have first appearances before the actual comic comes out. I know Miles Morales, when his regular series in Ultimate Comics was being published, and before it came out with his new costume and everything, it was previewed on the previews book here on the cover, and that actually has some value. I know that the one from a couple months ago here had the Ultimate Spider-Man cover on there. I think that one's actually going up in value as well. But they use this really for 2 reasons. One, so I can take this now and I can start reviewing my books. I'm getting ready to place the order in for the books for 3 months from now. And they also use this as a buffer to protect the books in shipment. So let's just go through the books, and I'll go do a quick assessment. I'll try not to spend too long on every book, but long time a fan of the Avengers, so I will pick up some of the side books of the Avengers. This is Avengers Incorporated. This is issue #4. I've obviously kept this series going just a little bit. It intrigued me just enough that I've kept with it. I don't know how long this is going to run. I think this is just a limited series probably, but my guess is this is a book that will probably get dropped pretty soon. The original X-Men, and what a beautiful cover that is, right? I mean, who did that cover? I can't really, it's a little dark in here. I can't really read who did the cover, but Greg Land does the interior artwork, and that's a good mix. You got Greg Land and X-Men, so went ahead and picked that up. I don't know if I continued with the series or not. I have to check to see if Greg Land's actually continuing to do the artwork. Right off, I can't recall if I'm continuing with this or not, but I thumbed through this before I put this in here, and just some beautiful artwork. I've been picking up any new Marvel crossover series. Well, I shouldn't say crossover, but miniseries, and I did that with Gods. And Jonathan Hickman's storyline, the original preview to it, I thought was kind of interesting, so I kept with it. This is issue #3. I think I've got issue #4 ordered for next month's order, but I think it's only 6 issues, but I think I've dropped this at this point. What you'll see a lot with me is I will pick up some of the newer books and I'll stick with them for a little bit, sometimes out of obligation to collecting, sometimes just wanting to get into a new series, and if it keeps my interest, I'll keep with it. There's all kinds, in every order here, it isn't just buy a bunch of new comics. There's reasons behind every one of these, and it changes every month, and every one of them have a little bit different of a reason. With Gods, I was like, okay, let's see what the latest multi-series is going to be about. To me, this hasn't been that interesting. And I've heard my thoughts on new comics before, is that I have not enjoyed really the art in a lot of new comics as well. But we'll get into that as we go through on this. And I'm going to check my mic. Oh, good, my mic's still working. All right, so here's one, and I can start to talk about a little bit about why I like or don't dislike books. With this is Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars. It kind of goes back in time, and it's going to Battle World. I don't know if these are new stories or if they're going back and they're bringing characters back to Battle World. I don't know if it's a retro series or not. This is issue #2, but you've got Tom DeFalco writing this, and Tom DeFalco is a longtime Marvel editor and writer, and good writer on comics, so he knows these characters. And that's something that we're going to get into as we go through this, and I'll mention this on some of the other books. is that what I'm finding is, I don't like the art quite as much. I definitely don't like the coloring on a lot of the modern comic books. I think the color is what's taking away from the artwork in general. I think it's too heavy. I think it doesn't have to be flat, typical comic book art coloring. But if you go back and you look at coloring on a lot of the older stuff, that wasn't necessarily flat. I mean, they used different tones here and there, but these days, it feels like the the shading overpowers the inking and the penciling. And anyway, that's my complaint about the art. But one of the things I'm going to complain about is also the writing. And this isn't one of those that I'm worried about, because Tom DeFalco is an old-time Marvel writer. And the older writers seem to know how to write characters, so each different character has a personality. You can tell that sounds exactly like what that character should sound like, as opposed to what I'm seeing right now. Let me go down to the bottom of the pile, and this right here. This is the new Spider-Man issues number 39 and 40. It is being written by Zeb Wells, who's done some good stuff. But I've been reading through this, and Spider-Man is a book that I buy out of obligation. I have enjoyed John Romita Jr.'s artwork in the past. I am not enjoying it these days. It really has lost something. But I'm reading these issues, and the whole new series seems exactly like that. If you read every character in here, it almost doesn't matter what character is saying what. It just sounds like the writer is putting words on a page to a character. And it doesn't matter which character is saying it. There was a scene in here where She-Hulk is talking, and I'm going, that doesn't sound like She-Hulk. These characterizations, the way they interact, none of it feels natural. It feels like, hey, a writer is putting words on a page and they're putting it there for that character. And it just doesn't feel that way. Yet you go back onto, now I haven't read this, so I can't say to this specifically, but you go back to when you see some of the old-time writers come back onto characters. You see Claremont coming back, and he does a miniseries with Extreme X-Men, for example, or J.M. DeMatteis. I always mess his name up. He came back, and he was doing something recently, and I was reading that, and I'm going, oh my God, those characters sound exactly the way they're supposed to sound. And that is a trifecta. You've got bad writing, not the best pencils, and then you've got bad coloring all around these days on a lot of things. And here I am. I'm the old man on the lawn yelling, "Get off my lawn, you hooligans, get off of there. You're not making comics good." And I'm not sure if that can really be corrected, but there still is always good stuff that comes out. You do have modern writers who do a fantastic job, like James Tynion, for example, does really good. Zeb Wells has done good stuff in the past, but his Spider-Man is very flat to me. Anyway, enough of that ramble. Let's just continue with the new comic book thing. Here, I did order a copy of Timeless, and this is one of those that's an example of, in my previous video, when I actually did a new comic book day. This wasn't on the new comic book day for that week. It had been the previous week, but I did go and pick up a copy of this because did I order that? And that's a fault of mine, where if I go to New Comic Book Day, I should have a list of what I've pre-ordered, so I don't buy duplicates like this. But what the LCS did not have on the stand was a copy of the alternate cover to Timeless. This right here is a four-page gatefold cover. It's got 4 different panels that fold out with most of the Avengers characters all illustrated by Alex Ross. This is a beautiful illustration, and if they ever put this out in a poster or a print, I may have to get that. But that is something that the LCS did not have, and I did pre-order that one, so I'm glad I got that one right there. Now, I don't do a lot of DC these days. I haven't, other than maybe some Batman and Detective Comics a little bit. But I did pick this up, and it was a cover buy. And for the new the Joker Harley Quinn uncovered book right here, they reprinted the beautiful Alex Ross cover right there. What was the original? Where did this come from? I'm blanking right off the top, but they reprinted it right here. And I did buy the cover stock foil edition version of that. And if CGC ever does a re-signing with Alex Ross, I may have to send this one in. That's absolutely gorgeous right there. And continue with DC a little bit. I've been talking a lot recently about how much I am a fan of the Justice League of America. Let's try that again. The Justice Society. Recently I've been talking a lot about how much of a fan I am of the Justice Society of America. The old Golden Age stories, the all-star comics from when they came back with Power Girl and the new generation of heroes, the All-Star Squadron books, going into Infinity Inc., then into the late 90s and 2000s with the JSA book, a lot of Alan Davis artwork, Jeff Johns writing. You've got the JSA series with Dale Eaglesham doing art. You've got beautiful single character covers with Alex Ross. Love that. Well, they just recently started the Justice Society book again, and here it is, some of my favorite characters in DC, and I just can't get on board. I mean, yes, here's issue 8, and I think I go through at least issue 9 before I eventually have dropped this now. Not enjoying this, and again, I think it comes down to characterization. It's the writers, and they're writing themselves through these characters, or they're writing what it's like fanfic, and it doesn't feel like the characters. It doesn't feel real. Don't enjoy it. And then if the art doesn't really appeal to me to begin with, and your piss poor writing doesn't do anything for me, the book gets dropped. So after issue 9, this gets dropped. Now, one book I have been continuing with Marvel, I do it out of obligation. There's several Marvel ones. I just continue doing that. Avengers will be a reoccurring theme, but I have been continuing with Thor. Al Ewing's actually been writing this, and this has been pretty good. But I've been mostly buying it because here you go again. We got a theme today in these orders. Alex Ross is just killing it with these covers. Absolutely stunning Thor. He continues with this line. And the art's not too bad on the inside. I don't know that artist, but I've actually kind of enjoyed that. And even the coloring in this one seems to be a little bit better and not as overpowering. So Thor I'd recommend right now. And I've briefly read over these, but I haven't sat down and read and absorbed it as much. But I've enjoyed it, what I've read so far, but I really need to sit down and really read it. I think it's going to be good to read as multiple issues at one time so you can get all of it at once. But beautiful cover. Now, another really well written story, a new book right now, is the new Captain America ongoing series with Steve Rogers. I have 2 really favorite Marvel superheroes as my favorite superheroes. Growing up, they still are my favorites to this day. I don't necessarily like some of the way they're being written all the time, but from my childhood, a Ben Grimm Thing fan and then Captain America fan. And I'm a huge Steve Rogers fan. So even when I'm not enjoying the book, I still pick this up. And I hadn't been enjoying the previous series other than those Alex Ross covers. Art was going down for me. But the new series, picked it up, brand new issue. I've stuck with it. And I wasn't really much of a fan of the art, so I hadn't got into really reading it until I was watching Bronze and Modern Gods, the YouTube channel. You guys, if you watch my channel, you know who those guys are. This right here, they were saying, what a wonderfully written story that is. And I've gone back and started reading this, and it's like, yeah, this is actually really good. So if you guys haven't given Captain America a chance, give that a chance. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of the art, but so far so good on this right here for a story. All right, so I will use the pre-order to pick up #1 issues, and I may not continue with it, but I do, as a collector, try to get those #1s sometimes. Daredevil, they got the new Daredevil #1 with Daredevil, Elektra on the cover right here. And again, this is a crossover with the gang war stories. That just seems like it's just ongoing. I can't keep track of what's going on, and frankly, I don't even care. But #1 issue to keep in the PC. I think I've dropped this after this first issue. I'll use that a lot. I'll use this service a lot just to get those #1s at a discount and just to have in the PC. Now, here's a book that I actually picked up at the LCS a week ago. It wasn't the new comic book of the week. It had been out a week prior, and it's Space Usagi, #1 of 3. And what's funny is I picked this up, and I talk about it in the new comic book day video I just put out. I picked this up because, oh, it's not a Stan Sakai cover. I probably have already pre-ordered this. I knew I'd already ordered this because Stan Sakai and Usagi Jim is my favorite creator and my favorite comic book. I pick it up every month. In fact, it is the first book I read whenever I get my new comic books every month. It's the first book. I go through the books, and it gets pulled out, and that's the first one I read. Now, I'm not as much of a fan of Space Usagi, but I still enjoy it. But I picked this one up at the LCS, this cover, because I didn't think I would have picked this up, not being a Stan Sakai cover. Turns out I did, so now I've got 2 copies of the exact same cover right there of that. But this one I know I did not pick up. It's the regular Usagi ongoing series. This is actually in issue number 2, technically 272, issue number 2 of 5 of the Ice and Snow storyline, but it is definitely the Stan Sakai cover right there. And I know I didn't pick this up. I think I had a variant cover of this that I picked up. I probably shouldn't have been picking up multiples. I complained about spending too much on comics to begin with to buy duplicates, but I did buy the variant cover on that one. Love this. In fact, normally if I don't sit down and bag and board these immediately like I did for this video, this book right here, this is the one that will get pulled out first. In fact, it will be the first book after we're done with this video that I'll sit down and I'll read this. Now, I mentioned the Avengers before. Avengers is always my favorite comic book to this day, and I buy it out of obligation, especially the ongoing series. I can't tell you what's going on. I haven't enjoyed any new Avengers books since some of the early stuff from the last ongoing series with Jason Aaron at the very beginning. It kind of fell apart. At the beginning, I liked it with some of the celestial stories and some of the 1 billion BC Avengers. I liked how that was going, but I didn't enjoy the Ghost Rider stuff, and I didn't enjoy the Phoenix storylines. And at the end, I don't even know what the heck was going on. And to be honest with you, Jason Aaron seemed like he got into a point where he was more interested in just churning out alternate versions of a million characters just so he could have IPs on everything out there and have a million characters. And I'm going to tell you, I'm getting a little tired of this whole multiverse and multiple versions of characters. It's a novelty. It's a crutch. It kind of worked in the Spider-Man movie with the 3 Spider-Men, but you keep doing it, you keep going down this road, and eventually you're just not going to, nobody's going to care. I mean, where are the consequences? You can just have another version come in. And not to say that there hasn't been good stories and good alternate versions come out. I think some of the dark multiverse stuff that DC did with the Dark Knight and Batman, some of that stuff was interesting. But the Marvel stuff just seems like we're just going to, oh, and then we're going to do characters that are mix mashed together. And we'll just, oops, books are falling. Yeah, I'm just going to a little bit of a rant right there. But going back to this, I have no idea what's going on. I will sit down and read this, but I buy this out of obligation just to keep my collection going with the Avengers. And here's another #1. I doubt that I picked up this. This is the new Sentry story. I ended up just picking up a #1 just to have that in a PC. I'm a big fan of the Thunderbolts. I love the original concept and the original series when you had who is that? Mark Bagley doing the artwork, and the original issue where you had the turn and you realize it's the villains who are there. I'm not necessarily as crazy about today's incarnation of the Thunderbolts, but whenever they come out with a new series, I'm always intrigued. I went ahead and picked up #1 of this. I don't know if I'm continuing with it. This does have a Terry Dodson cover, and I'm going to say this is probably one of my least favorite Terry Dodson covers I've ever seen. It's one of those, it looks like someone who's trying to do a Terry Dodson cover, but didn't quite succeed, yet it's actually is Terry Dodson. Now, I still continue to pick up this right here. This is Something Skilling Children, number 35. What I have stopped doing now is buying the variant covers to the ongoing series. You usually will have a foil to this and maybe another, at least one more cover, a variant cover, and I don't care anymore unless they do one of those die cut covers. I do pick those up, but this right here, I'm good just having the regular issue now, and that's pretty much what I'm doing with Something Skilling Children these days. Again, since I had mentioned James Tynion before, I think he's a really good writer. I think this book's been fantastic. I think his Fantastic Four, his Batman run was really good. But these days, I think his attention's diverted from this. He's not on Batman anymore, but his attention isn't. He writes this, but I don't think they pay enough attention to this right here. He's always coming up with new books, new concepts, and they're hot for a split second, and then he just goes and does something else. He really has a lot of different concepts, and he keeps just throwing them at the wall to see what sticks, and then even if it sticks, he doesn't stay with it. And Nice House on the Lake was a really good example. It just kind of goes away. There's a ton of stuff. He just keeps turning out new and different stuff, and I would like to see this. This right here should be his main focus, and I think if he put a little bit more effort into staying with this solely instead of trying to promote all kinds of different things, I think this right here probably would have already been in production, and we would have seen on-screen versions of this, and I think it could still be as big as it was. Again, this must be the day of rants, because that's my James Tynion rant. Anyway, continuing with what let me lean over here. Continuing with what a typical order for me is, one of my weaknesses, if you guys follow my channel, you know I love facsimiles. So every month it seems like DC and Marvel are churning out facsimiles for different reasons. Sometimes it's just because, we're pushing a first appearance, or maybe we've got a character coming up that we want to publish their first appearance, but for that reason. It could be for different reasons, but maybe it's anniversary, where it's an anniversary of something, and maybe this is what this was. But I picked up 2 copies of Batman 428. It is the series where we kill Robin. I was going to say Jim Aparo artwork on the interior. You've got Jim Starlin writing this, and you've got these great Mike Mignola covers, and I picked up 2 of that. A lot of times I will pick up multiples of these because I believe that a lot of facsimiles in this kind of condition, you can get these 9.8s and they can have some good value. Today's market kind of dictates that a little bit as well. But if it's a really good book, like an Amazing Fantasy 15, Hulk 181s, the original X-Men #1, Hulk #1s, things like that, I've seen getting graded 9.8s. They actually have some decent value. Books like this may not have that same sort of thing, but I still continue to pick up these. Sometimes I'll pick up 1, but sometimes I'll pick up 2 just to have in the PC. This is a book that you're probably just better off. It's still a modern book, more or less. It's still not that old. You can go back and buy the original copies of this and still get really good conditions on that. But I picked that up. I only picked up 1 of this because this is a book I never cared about when it came out. I never had it. I wasn't the biggest Rich Buckler fan of the Fantastic Four, even though you had Joe Sennett doing the inking. This is a book, I just picked this up just to have it so I could read it, and that was the only reason I ended up getting that facsimile. going back to the books that I think if you get graded can do really good. But the other reason I also get some facsimiles is to get signed. And maybe the original book's really expensive, but facsimiles, if you take it to cons, you can get the writer, the inker, the editor, whatever. And this is the case of this. I ended up picking, they've got new copies of facsimiles of Wolverine #1, the limited series by Claremont and Frank Miller. And I picked up 3 of these because these actually do really well if you get signed by Miller, Claremont, Rubenstein, and even Louise, I was going to say Louise Jones, Louise Simonson, who did the editing on these. These can actually do really good. Get them signed, get them graded. They actually have some really good value, especially you get a 9.8 on the facsimile. Even it's the value really then is the signatures at that point. So it's a really cheap way to get the book and then have a valuable signed asset at that point. I did only pick up 1 copy of this because this is a book you can pick up for practically nothing even today. This is the 4th part of the Batman Year One story by Frank Miller. And I'm not sure if they've reprinted every one of these yet, but I'm glad I only picked up 1 of these. That pink in the Batman affair just doesn't, it actually pops a little too much. The colors not quite as similar as they were on the original comic, but I did pick up 1 of those just to have. I did pick up multiples of this. I did pick up multiples of the facsimile reprint to the first issue of the New Teen Titans. The shame George Perez is no longer with us. This is something I would definitely go get signed. Marv Wolfman is still with us, of course, but this might be one that might be graded at some point, but you can still do pretty good on a graded original copy of that. I kind of just, it's one of my favorite comic books. That's why I bought multiples of that one, but I don't think it's going to necessarily, I don't know if that one's going to be something worth getting graded at any point. We'll see how the market goes. I did pick up a couple copies of Adventure Comics. Which one is this? Hang on. Issue number 260. And I thumbed through this. I can't recall why I bought this other than being a facsimile, but I think it's the origin of Aquaman in this. This is probably why it was coming out with the new Aquaman movie coming out. They put out the origin of Aquaman. That seems like that would make sense. And then the last comics I got were some nice Golden Age reprints. They did Batman #5, and you guys can let me know in the comments. Right off, I don't recall what the reason for this facsimile, other than I think it's the first appearance of the Penguin. But you guys can let me know what the significance is. But I bought 2 regular issues of that. And what's nice about these facsimiles is that, you know, look how thick that is. They actually reprint the entire book, not just the Batman story and cover, but all the other short stories that you have with other characters in the back of this. But I also picked up 2 copies of the foil editions of that, and some of these really good classic Golden Age books like this. I know I did it with Wonder Woman, and I'm sure some of the other Batman #1s and stuff, when they had the foil editions of that as well. Those are books that I would be more opt to get graded, and I've been picking up some of the foils because in my mind, I think if you got a 9.8 and it's the foil edition, maybe it's a little bit better of a collectible. I don't know. It's just the way I was thinking when I was getting these. But let me see what else. So those were all the comics. Hang on one sec. I only had one other thing from this particular month, and that's this right here. It is the new collected edition. This is the Marvel Masterworks, the new paperback of this. And maybe Marvel's going to get back into doing paperbacks of the Marvel Masterworks series. And what these are is they collect the original comics in sequential order. And big fan of the Marvel Masterworks, the original ones over the last 20-some years. I don't get the hardbound ones. Those are really expensive, but I would wait till they came out with the paperback versions. And I collected those for years. One of my LCSs for years would have these big 50 and 60% off sales on paperbacks. And that's how I built up that Marvel Masterworks paperback collection. Well, I never did get the original Silver Surfer ones. And in fact, you can still find them in places, but they're going to be $75, $100. They're limited now. But this is a brand new one that just came out. And this right here, let me show you the back. It actually shows you the cover to some of the books that they are reprinting. It reprints Silver Surfer number 1 through 4, the Fantastic Four Annual number 5, the short story in that, with which is technically, I want to think that that was one of the first solo Silver Surfer stories out there. And then, not brand how do you say that? The old parody comic from the Silver Age, number 13, which must be a Silver Surfer story from that they've reprinted. And so it's a nice little collected edition. This is basically comic book size. I'm not sure if this was 50% off, but I think it was. This was only $16, so I'm paying probably about 35% off of the cover price on that. So it's kind of nice to have the collected version. I can read all those original John Buscema stories from the original Silver Surfer stories. It obviously has the first 4 issues, number 1, number 3, and number 4, of course, being big time collectible comics. The first appearance of Mephisto, the cover with Thor and Silver Surfer meeting. Those are big issues to have as Rawls. But this is really good because it's going to be nice to be able to sit down and read those stories without having to worry about looking for reprints or even the originals on that. There you go. That is what this new comic book month was for me. And as I said, what I'm surprised is that I did not get my Ultimate Spider-Man number 1. I know that they're going to be coming in next month's order. And that's the problem with ordering comics this way, is that I'm going to miss out on having those comics. Maybe I want to sell that Ultimate Spider-Man number 1. But I'm not getting it for another month, and by then the heat is going to be way off of it. So if you're trying to speculate by buying comics the way I'm doing like this, forget about it. It's not going to work. You need to go to your LCS. You need to do pre-orders with your LCS so you have your copies. But be nice. I'm going to have a couple copies of that issue come in, and like I said, in a month, and at least I'll have it. But this is the way I've had to collect comics most of my life, because I grew up Southern West Virginia where I didn't have an LCS. It wasn't until after college and I eventually moved to Maryland and I started having an LCS that I could go to that I started going to new comic book days and getting comics on a regular basis, on a timely basis. But I still order comics like this to this day because the discounts are fantastic. And again, with prices being the way they are, I'll take those discounts. I need those discounts because there's no way an order like this would probably be closer to $300 to $400 by the time I'm finished with if it was just straight up cover price. So save a lot of money. But I'm also, as you'll see, if you go back on the first video that I did when I did a new monthly order from M&M Comics, a lot more books. This box is actually, this order right here is starting to cut down on it. When I do this in a month, you're going to see that the orders cut down even more. And I know in 2 months, because I literally have just watched the orders that I've put in, I'm going from, at one point I was up to close to 70 books a month. Right now, the last order I just put in, I think I've got 12 or 13 books on there. And yeah, just cutting back. And eventually, if I need to go back and if I miss something, I'll go back to my LCS, or I may just order it. If there's a book that I really want, I'll just order it at that point from off of eBay or one of my LCSs. Like, I'm not too worried about it at this point. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing, and just by hitting the subscribe button, definitely hit that like button. That helps the algorithm get that channel out there so more people will see the channel. And definitely click on the notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any of my episodes that I put out each and every week, Mondays and Fridays at 10 a.m. But that's it for today, guys. Leave me a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think of today's order and what you think about the way I go about getting new comics. I'd love to hear your feedback. But that's it for today. I will see you for the next episode, guys. And remember, every comic has a story.